Hello and welcome to Opt to Thrive, episode 31, Yo-Yo Dieting and Body Positivity.
Welcome to Opt to Thrive, your go-to podcast for women's wellness in midlife, designed to educate, support, and inspire you to live your very best life. And now your host, Dr. Corina Sims.
So, today I'm going to try something a little bit different. I am going to record this on video. I do have some of the podcast episodes, well, actually all the podcast episodes up on YouTube, but none with video. So let's see how that goes. It is an absolutely spectacular day. If I had recorded this a couple of days, I would not have been saying that. It was gray and cold and stormy. It is cold. It is cold. I'm not going to lie, but that sky out there is ridiculously blue, and it is a crisp, gorgeous morning. It is a Monday public holiday, which is nice. Have an extra day to do some of this kind of fun stuff rather than my other kind of fun stuff. And so here we go. Now, it's interesting. This episode I actually was going to do as a mindful moment, but then I did an outline of what I wanted to talk about and it just kept kind of growing. So it's not going to fit into a mindful moment. I'm not sure exactly how long it will be, but I had a lot of thoughts because I have been doing a lot of reflecting lately about the topic we're going to talk about today. And this is because I have a free upcoming webinar. I've never done a webinar before either. All this fun stuff I'm doing for the first time. I love it. I'm doing this webinar because I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. I have said it before, and I really want to get some accurate information out there. One of the issues that I see most with my patients that come to see me a lot in general and in the menopause clinic at midlife, one of the things that they struggle with most is putting on this extra weight. Now, before I get started today, I really just want to make sure that if you have a history of an eating disorder, in case you didn't catch the title of this particular episode, I am going to be talking about disordered eating and weight loss today. So if this could be a trigger for you, please just give this one a miss. Okay. So as I said, been doing a lot of reflecting. I myself have had some struggles, and if you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, you know that I was hit pretty hard with these changes of midlife, and one of them was putting on extra weight and had some trouble trying to remove it. And so I've learned a lot, and I want to share a lot of that information with you, which is the point of the webinar, to explain what our bodies are doing at this stage of our life, why we're putting on this extra weight, why it might be difficult to get rid of it, and what we need to do to actually manage our weight, from here and beyond. Okay, so today we're going to talk about yo-yo dieting. So that's the repeated cycle of gaining and losing weight, in case you didn't know. And we're going to talk about what it's doing to your body. Now, I mentioned eating disorders and disordered eating in the intro, and I think that it's important that we point out here where dieting fits in, right? Disordered eating has been a term that's been thrown around a bit in recent times. Dieting in and of itself is considered by some to be one of the most common forms of disordered eating. So I'm just going to define disordered eating for you. It's a spectrum of maladaptive eating behaviors and attitudes towards food, weight, and body shape. Now, it's important to recognize that not everyone who diets will develop an eating disorder, but it would be hard to find a person with an eating disorder who has not been on a diet. It's also important to point out that eating disorders are more common in midlife women than many may realize, and it can affect up to 7% of women in their 40s and 50s. Binge eating disorder is the most common eating disorder in this age group. Anorexia and bulimia are less frequent. One major risk factor, though, is yo-yo dieting. So that, repeated losing and regaining the weight, that can lead to a poor body image, a sense of losing control around food, and developing patterns like binge eating or using food to just cope with life and stress in general. The risk is even higher for women who've experienced depression, trauma, or tend to feel like they're not in control of their circumstances. So those women are even higher risk of maybe developing an eating disorder. So if you're concerned that you could be losing control or that you could be developing or have developed an eating disorder, please talk to your doctor about it. Dieting itself is extremely common. When I looked up the statistics, apparently 75% of us women have dieted in our lifetime. That's, almost all of us, really. 3/4. I think that's really interesting because there has been some work out there on changing diet culture over the years. There've been a couple of big, important movements over the last several years that are working to change the way that we and society look at our bodies. There's the body positivity movement, which encourages us to respect and appreciate our bodies just as they are. It really challenges the very limited idea of what is generally considered beautiful. The message is that every body deserves to be seen, valued, and included. It's about helping people, especially women, and those who've often been left out of mainstream representation, feel better in their bodies. Reduce the shame and the pressure that people feel when they don't match unrealistic standards. And then there's the health at every size movement. That's been around for some years now. It's focusing on what you do for your body, not what it looks like. It's often talked about alongside body positivity. Say that fast 3 times. But it's more about health habits than appearance. So instead of making weight loss the goal, health at every size encourages you to care for your body through things like eating in a way that feels good, moving in ways that you enjoy, and treating yourself with kindness, no matter what your size is. It's about shifting the focus from chasing a certain number on the scale to building sustainable, feel-good habits that support your physical and mental well-being at any size. But despite these movements, I know that we still have a long way to go, and that 75% is probably a little clue. Now, today I want to talk about yo-yo dieting in particular. Some of us have had what I would call low-level weight issues on and off repeatedly. Some would say that they've gained and lost the same 10 pounds or 5 kilos over and over again. I'm one of those people. Now, to get us all on the same page, I want to start by talking about BMI, so your body mass index, because it gives us a framework to use to help me illustrate what I'm trying to say, so we're speaking the same language. Before some of you get too excited, though, I will acknowledge that BMI does have its flaws, and I'm going to talk about those. But I'm going to start by first defining BMI. So our BMI is just a calculation of our height and our weight. It's our weight in kilograms divided by our height in meters squared. A normal BMI is considered to be 20 to 25. Overweight is 26 to 30. And over 30 is considered to be obese. I really don't care for that word, but it is what it is. Now, in terms of flaws, for starters, BMI just compares your weight to your height. It doesn't tell the difference between muscle and fat. So someone who's fit and muscular could be labeled overweight. And someone with a normal BMI could actually have really high levels of body fat. You may have heard this called skinny fat. So just because someone looks to be a normal weight doesn't mean that they aren't carrying around too much body fat. especially if that body fat is right around the middle, because that is more strongly linked to health risks, that visceral fat, which we'll talk a bit more about in a second. Now, BMI also doesn't take into account things like age, sex, or ethnicity, all of which can affect how body fat's distributed and what that means for our health. For example, some populations like people with Asian backgrounds may be at higher risk at lower BMIs, while women generally have higher body fat percentages than men in the same BMI. And as we age, there is some evidence that it's probably better for us to sit in the 25 to 30 BMI range, which would be considered to be overweight generally. BMI cannot tell you where the fat is stored, and that really matters. As I said, fat right around the midsection carries health risks, more health risks than fat stored elsewhere because of the visceral fat. It's that fat that sits around our organs. But BMI doesn't tell us anything about that. Beyond the physical health piece, relying on BMI can also reinforce a weight-focused view of health, which we know can lead to stigma, bias, and negative effects on mental well-being. And that's one reason why movements like the health at every size and body positivity are moving away from BMI, encouraging instead to focus on healthy behaviors and self-care instead of chasing numbers on a scale. Now, as a GP, one of my main jobs is to keep people healthy and identify risk, so we can help lower those risks. BMI is one of the things that we often use. I personally have also been recording waist circumference because that can help give me a clue whether or not someone is at increased risk. When it comes to predicting health risks like high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease, the research shows us that waist to height ratio is actually more accurate than BMI or the waist circumference by itself. Your waist should be less than half your height. The waist to height ratio is recommended by leading health organizations like the International Association for the Study of Obesity and NICE. So that's the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. And they like it because it's a simple, effective, and easy way to gauge this risk, and it's easy for people to understand and apply it. Now, before I go any further, I want it understood that my general opinion is that I wholeheartedly agree with the body positive movement. I do think things need to change in terms of objectification of women and fat shaming. I also wholeheartedly agree with the health at every size movement in terms of the core ideas that everybody deserves respect. You can focus on health without obsessing over your weight. Exercise should feel good. It shouldn't feel like punishment. And that diet culture and body shaming are out. But as a GP, as I said, it is my job to help my patients lower their risks of disease. If a patient's body composition is putting them at risk, in other words, they are carrying an excess of body fat, then it is my job to help them if this is what they want me to do. There is no body shaming involved. Just as if they had low vitamin D, I would tell them the risks associated with low vitamin D, and then we would work out a management plan together. It really isn't any different. There is no shaming. I have, though, heard countless stories from people, some who I care deeply about, who have been told by a doctor in pretty ruthless and unkind ways that they need to lose weight. I absolutely do not support that behavior. I do think the weight issue is extraordinarily complex. In 2013, obesity, as defined by our BMI measurements, was officially recognized as a disease, not just a lifestyle issue. And that is because of what we've learned about how complex it really is. It's linked to changes in how the body functions and increases the risk of serious health problems. There are some schools of thought that obesity should be treated with medication like any other condition that may require pharmacological treatment. The American Gastroenterological Association recommends the injectable weight loss medications along with lifestyle changes for adults with a BMI over 30 or those who are considered overweight with a BMI over 27, who also have weight-related complications, and they've not been able to achieve adequate weight loss with lifestyle modification alone. And there are some, though, as far as I'm aware, no official recommendation, but some who recommend long-term use of these medications because weight regain after stopping them is often pretty significant. I myself have seen not only pretty amazing results with these medications in terms of weight loss, but also in the freedom that some people experience with them. Some people, for the first time in their lives, are free of nearly constant thoughts of food, and some that have experienced a sensation of actually feeling full, which is a sensation some people rarely feel no matter how much they eat. These medications essentially work by decreasing the amount people eat. And I won't go very far into it because I did do a whole episode. I'll put the link in the show notes for you. But because of how quickly people often lose weight with them, in other words, the caloric deficit is so significant, they will be losing muscle mass, just like anyone else on a calorie-restricted diet. But they really need to be doing resistance exercise and eating enough protein to protect their muscle. For my patients, we have this discussion, so please have this discussion with your doctor if you haven't already and you are on or are considering these medications. I do also wholeheartedly believe you get to choose what you do with your body. And if that means you want to change your body composition for aesthetic reasons, then that's your choice. I don't think that should be shamed either. So back to the yo-yo dieting. Speaking of losing muscle, if we have cut our calories significantly for periods of time to rid ourselves of body fat, we have also likely lost some muscle mass each time that we've done that. We're already losing our muscle as we age, so this is a bad idea. Yo-yo dieting can slow down your metabolism over time, not only because you've lost some of that muscle mass, but when you go on a strict diet, your body responds by using less energy, even more than you would expect from just losing weight. And then when you go back to eating normally, often the body fat is regained rapidly, and it often overshoots where it was even before, because your metabolism doesn't bounce back fully to what it was before. This means you may put on weight more easily. Can also affect your hunger signals and how your body handles food. Your appetite might increase and your body might crave more energy. These changes happen because of shifts in hormones, inflammation, and possibly even lasting changes in how your genes function, creating a kind of weight regain memory that can make future weight loss even harder. Strict diets that use rigid rules and restrictions can also cause us to disconnect from our body's natural signals like feeling hungry or feeling full. Now, if you've listened for any length of time, you know that one of the struggles I had coming into this midlife period, like many of you, was putting on weight that I wasn't comfortable with, and finding that all the things that I used to do to lose weight, and as I said, I have done it repeatedly over the years. I know I'm not alone, and we're going to talk a bit more about that. But yes, nothing was working. So because I was really motivated to shed the excess weight, and I realized that I was going to have to change my approach, I went to the science to find the solutions. I came to understand what I had done to my metabolism and my muscle with the yo-yo dieting. And I appreciated that I was going to have to change how I approached this midlife body. I was going to have to do things differently if I wanted a long-term, sustainable approach. And I found one. And it's been pretty amazing. I was really surprised by a number of things during this process. One of the things that really surprised me along the way was that I found acceptance of a number on the scale that I once would not have believed I would ever be happy with. I found a new love and respect for my body and the things it can do. I found a really healthy approach to eating. So a much better relationship with food, a relationship I hadn't really appreciated was not so great. I would have told you that I ate reasonably well. But as I've said in previous episodes, I hadn't learned to manage an energy budget so well. Obviously, because I kept overdoing it and finding myself in the same place again and again. And I know that I'm not alone here. Many of us have gotten to this midlife stage and we just want to get off of the dieting roller coaster. We are over flogging ourselves with grueling cardio sessions. We have had enough. We want peace. A lot of us have decided we aren't after a washboard stomach or to even wear a bikini again. We just want to be a size that feels comfortable, that we can be happy with, a body that will do the things we want it to do over the years to come, traveling, hiking, grandkids, whatever that looks like for you. And we just want it to be sustainable. We have spent so much time and energy in this space, we just don't want to think about it anymore. From this point, many of us will throw our hands in the air and just let it rip, telling ourselves we're just going to accept our bodies like they are, not worry about it anymore, just eat and drink whatever and however much we want, and just be happy. You're laughing if you've done this because a lot of us have. You can relate because from there, often we put on more weight. And then we find ourselves hating getting dressed to go out because we don't like the way our clothes fit and we feel uncomfortable in our bodies. And that may have absolutely nothing to do with how it looks. Or maybe it does. Maybe you don't like the way it looks. And carrying extra weight can actually be uncomfortable and limit how much and what you can do physically. I know I was uncomfortable. I had reflux when I laid flat. My husband told me I was snoring every night, which was probably not helping with my sleep quality. The waistband of the jeans I could wear dug into my stomach at just the right point that they gave me severe gas pains. TMI. I physically felt uncomfortable, but I'm not going to lie. Those things were only part of my motivation for wanting to change my body composition. Part of my motivation was to look a certain way. It was to like the way I looked and to feel good in my clothes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So then where does that leave us? We want to be body positive and embrace health at every size. But body positivity tells us not to lose weight just to fit into some societal norm. I agree with that. I think if we want to change our body composition, it should be because of the way we want to look and feel for us, not for anyone else. The health at every size movement tells us to focus more on health habits than specifically on weight loss as the primary goal. I can see how this can be really empowering too, and I believe that, again, inadvertently, this is what I did. I took a step back and I focused on making small tweaks in what I was already doing, small sustainable changes that I could live with. And once I had set myself up well, I then focused on shedding some of that visceral fat. I started by doing less cardio and I added in consistent resistance training. I am telling you, ladies, I am telling you, the resistance training has changed my whole world. I have always loved to lift weights, but it was only if I had time to do that, right? Cardio was always the priority because that's what I thought I needed to be doing. And yes, you do need to work your heart. You do need to be doing some cardio, but I am telling you, resistance training, feeling strong and fit makes you feel amazing. And it goes so far towards being able to accept the body that you're in when you feel strong and fit and confident and capable. I also prioritized protein and fiber, and I leveraged them in my diet to lose the body fat and then to easily sustain my body composition. The side effects of doing those things, my body, I don't think has ever functioned so well. I was surprised that I wasn't getting enough fiber, for instance, in my diet, and that my gut could actually work a lot better than it was working for my entire life, really. I reconnected with what it felt like to be hungry and full. I worked out how many calories I needed to lose the body fat when I went through the fat loss phase. And then I worked out how many calories I needed to maintain my weight when I was done. And then I learned to do that intuitively. I also worked on my mindset, the areas that were letting me down. I looked at where I was overeating and why, and I worked on that too. I restrict nothing. There is nothing off limits. I have no food rules. I eat everything. I have just learned to manage my daily energy budget. I have found a way off of that roller coaster. I am the strongest, most confident, most body confident I have ever been. And I want to share the details with anybody who's interested in doing the same thing. As I said, I'm doing a free webinar. It's on Saturday, June 21st at 9 a.m. Australian Central Standard Time. Don't worry if you can't make it. I will record it and it will be available after. I'm going to put a link in the show notes for you. I'm going to talk about what is happening to our bodies at this stage of life, why we put on weight, and what you can do to get off of that diet roller coaster. I'm popping the link to register your interest in the show notes. If you're interested in learning all of these things too, I hope you'll join me. I can't wait to share this with you guys. I hope this has been helpful for you. And if it has, please, as I always say, share it with someone who you think might get something out of it too. Please rate and review the podcast because that's going to make it more visible for those people who are really needing this information too. Have a great week, everyone. And until then, I hope you opt to thrive.
The Opt to Thrive podcast is designed for information purposes only and is not engaged in the giving of medical advice. The information provided on the podcast should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. In no way should the information provided by Opt to Thrive be considered medical advice, and at all times the advice of a medical professional should supersede recommendations from Opt to Thrive. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, you should consult your healthcare provider. The views expressed in this podcast are purely that of Dr. Sims and do not in any way reflect those of the institutions she contracts medical services to.
Thank you for listening to Opt to Thrive. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate and share the podcast. You can visit our website at opttothrive.com and leave a comment for any subjects you would like to hear more about.